So in this lesson, I want to talk about this sort of strum technique with our PIMA. And what I love about this is that it does two things. One, it gives you a little bit more texture when you're strumming a chord. But the other thing is that when you strum this way, it emphasizes the highest note. And that highest note is usually the melody. So this is an easy way to get the melody to sort of jump out and stay singing while you're playing the rest of the chords. So what we're talking about here is, remember that PIMA and that 3 in a row principle we talked about. So for example, we started off just doing the PIMA as individual notes. We went from, for example, put your third finger down here on the third fret of the low E, and then your index, your IMA, are going to be on the D, G, and B strings, and you play those one at a time. All right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the next thing we did was take that same PIMA with the 3 in a row idea, and we put them all together, and we did a sort of pinch here. And remember, the pinch isn't necessarily bouncing off like that. You don't put all of the fingers on and then sort of bounce off. You're actually sort of picking past one another. Thumb goes one direction, the other fingers go the other way. Now what we're going to do is go, so we did individual notes, we did pinching them all together, and now we want to do a strum like this. It's a very subtle thing, but the difference between or this, you can hear how the melody is emphasized. It really helps that jump out and stand away from the rest of the notes that are happening, but also gives you a little bit more texture and interest. You know, you can put this at any point in whatever chord you're playing in the arrangement that we're going to go through. So I tend to do this quite a bit, but it's a little bit tricky to get used to this mechanically at first. So the first idea when it comes to doing this that I want to emphasize is, don't think about it in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4 individual events that are happening. A way to sort of almost exaggerate it so that you get the idea is if you were to put all of the fingers on the notes that you're about to play, again back on this sort of G with your third finger, the one finger G version that we went through. And if you think about it, almost turn your wrist so that you're sort of pulling the notes away one at a time like this. Now this is an over-exaggeration of the movement, but I want you to see what's happening. That is, you're sort of, all of the fingers are on the strings, and you're just sort of rolling the wrist so that they leave and pick the note one at a time in succession. And this is very similar if you were to do a slow strum like that, but we won't have time to do that in the song, so you have to do that sort of strum pattern here very, very slowly with your PIMA. So what you want to do when you practice this is don't worry too much about trying to get them really fast or really slow. You're just looking for that movement. You're sort of relaxingly leaving the strings in succession. So if it helps to just go 1, 2, 3, 4 slow, and then a little bit more, don't worry too much about trying to really do a speed burst. Just make it very natural. Start with turning the wrist, and then eventually that sort of just becomes a succession like this. PIMA, PIMA, and it'll feel like one event like that. All right? So now what we want to do is think about filling in some of the cracks. After we've done this, some of the cracks in the beat where we did have a whole note or a half note ringing before. Okay, so for the beginning melody part, we can try it. All right, all I'm doing here is after I go up, I sort of strum up, and then I go back to the middle on the G on the open, and then the index on the D on the open. That can be very hard to get mechanically at first, so let's try that a few times. And then the next thing we want to do is get the rest of the melody there. So we have, right, we're going to go up to there. So put your first finger on the B string, and then we're going to go to this chord that we learned a few lessons ago. This is this G over B, where you put your second finger here and the fourth finger here. And now we're just going to add a couple more notes. And this is just, again, to fill in and make it sound a little bit more full. And then use your index on the D, and then your pinky, your third finger with your pinky on this hand here, up there. And all I'm doing there is I'm actually lifting the pinky off after you get to this chord. So far we have... That's where it gets exciting, because now you have in your fingers the ability to make a really full acoustic guitar solo sound. I love that, because you're not just thinking block chords. We're not just grabbing, a half note or a whole note in the bass while the melody's going on. Now we're thinking about the inner voices of the chords. We establish our bass notes. We establish the melody. Now adding just a couple of little nuances in the middle of the chord can really help the whole arrangement come together. The next measure is going to do the open E here, and then you're going to do your second and your third finger on the second fret of the D and G right there. And what's great about this is you can kind of just, after you strum that, then hit the bass note again, and then we're going to go, these two are just going to hop down to grab an E minor here. And when you do this is a little weird now, because you're sort of strumming 4 notes in a row, the PIMA, but they're on the 4 lowest strings. So that will feel a little bit strange at first, so expect that. And now we're going back to this chord that we had before, where you put your first finger on the D string on the second fret, your second finger on the G, then you have to reach that third finger up to the A. This can feel a little bit strange at first, but just remember, double check your thumb position, your wrist, and your elbow. Make sure that's free and everything stays in a very neutral position. Okay, so I'm just sort of strumming because the melody goes. So I'm going to strum just the bottom part of that chord, the P, I, M, and then I'm going to hold for a second till I get to the A. And then I'm just going to pinch these 2 notes, the 3 and the 2, the 3 on the A, and then the 2 on the G. Then we go to this D over F sharp that we played previously. And I'm just adding a little bit more of a cool walk down with the thumb there. So we have that slow strum. And then you'd go back to the beginning part, all right? So now that we've walked through the mechanics of it, let's hear what it sounds like up to performance tempo at 72 beats per minute. Oh. All right, excellent. Now what we want to do is take this in 3 different tempos. We'll start at 50, we'll do 60, and then back up to performance tempo here at 72. So I'll see you in the next scene.